Thank you everyone so much for joining. It is such a pleasure to host you, Aleksa. Welcome to the DaoLens Discord space. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me here. I'm super excited for this talk today.
Yay, amazing. Also guys, towards the end of the session, we will have some community questions that you can ask Aleksa directly. We received some community questions from the Luma event. The people who registered themselves on Luma, so we'll pick those up. But let's get started. Since today's topic is legal challenges in DAO, Aleksa had jumped straight to the point and ask you a very hot topic which a lot of DAO admins are facing, which is what is the current legal situation in DAOs? I'd love for you to give us kind of like a high level overview of the regulatory landscape in DAOs.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's a question that is going to be very difficult to answer in many years to come. I will take a step back and explain what the issue is when it comes to DAOs and the lack of regulatory clarity. So currently, unfortunately, DAOs are often confused for general partnerships. And a general partnership is a business arrangement between two or more people where everyone involved equally shares profits, losses, and liabilities. Simply put, everyone who is a member of a project, of a DAO, could be equally liable with their personal assets for wrongdoings of one single person. And for that reason, it's very important to have at least some legal structure, so there is a protection and limitation of those personal liabilities, right? I mean, we've been seeing in the space, especially in the 2022, that there were many unfortunate events and abuse of the assets and abuse of the projects by either regular members and even the founders. And the project did not have necessary legal protections in place, and unfortunately, it came down really badly on the project and the projects and everyone involved. When it comes to a regulatory framework on a global level, generally we do currently have several states, for example, in the US, several countries, especially in the US, that do recognize DAOs as DAOs. First one to do that was Wyoming. They were the first to bring legislation when it comes to DAOs and seeing them as decentralized organizations. However, Wyoming was a great step forward. However, not really the best solution, since it does not really support the decentralized nature of DAOs. And I mean, with some I like to joke, they basically, took the word DAO and LLC and pasted it together, and they made that legislation. The second one that followed was the Marshall Islands, where they really did a step forward. Like, they went in further than Wyoming, and they were quite more friendly when it comes to DAOs and more supportive of the DAOs. Initially, they did have only a non-profit organization that you were able to register a DAO as a non-profit organization, and you do have, it's very supportive, but on the other hand, it's quite limiting because basically you cannot earn profits. And in December last year, they actually came up with legislation where that allows you to register DAO as a for-profit. So I think the Marshall Islands are actually becoming quite favorable place to register a DAO. Again, it's not perfect, but it does offer a lot better options than others. Then we have Tennessee as well. They brought DAO legislation in, I think, May. Disclaimer, I'm not sure about the month exactly of 2021. But from what I've heard, it's not really as popular, so I cannot comment much on that. And what I would also add when it comes to the states, that cooperatives are actually quite a favorable type of structure when it comes to DAOs, because they do allow that decentralized ownership, and where basically everyone involved can, for example, own a golf court through cooperative, and you don't need to worry much about securities, because the US law actually defines pretty well that if you're a hobbyist or if you're doing you're in a very specific area, through cooperative you can register and own certain property without the law actually seeing it as securities. And the good thing is that you can also self-govern, of course, and following the framework. However, it does allow for a high level of self-governance and independency. Though in my opinion, the cooperatives are not really applicable when the organization is big, because in cooperatives, you're rewarded based on your involvement, right? So you cannot be some sort of like a passive member or passive investor. You actually have to be involved, and based on that, you can receive revenue or whatever returns you have. And another thing is that also it does require like the register of all the members, which we know that in the space is not something that we that we like to do. However, for smaller projects and for people who do feel comfortable doing so, that is actually quite a good structure, because again, there is that limitation of liabilities, there is high level of self-governing, and you don't have to worry much about securities. So then going to Europe, we don't really have here any specific regulation to DAOs. However, there are countries that have supportive structures, and the most popular is actually Switzerland. It also offers nonprofit foundation, and it has some sort of like a for-profit structure that really again is supportive of the DAO structure. And it's also important to know that Switzerland was actually one of the first countries in Europe that came up with the crypto-friendly regulatory framework. And to this day, they're generally very friendly. They have, they're very tax-friendly as well. And I think they were the first to regulate ICOs. And the nonprofit foundation is, again, very supportive of the DAO structure. However, it's important to note that if you go for the nonprofit structure, that initial team of founders that you put, it's very difficult to change it at a later stage. So the for-profit structure might be a better option. For all this, I would highly recommend to consult a legal expert. What I'm saying here is from my personal experience and from talking with a bunch of lawyers. So it's not any type of financial or legal or business advice. It's rather giving you options on what you can look into when it comes to thinking of which jurisdiction to go to. Going back to Europe, so again, Switzerland is quite popular. I also know that UK is actually working on building a regulatory framework that is very supportive of DAOs, and they also actually did a public call, the Law Commission, and they said they gave, I think, a set of 10 questions for people who are actually in this space to help them understand how DAOs work. Other countries, well, I wouldn't list any other country that is very DAO friendly. Of course, there are more that are crypto and tax friendly, but when it comes to DAOs and structures, that would be the two I would mention. And going to other places, DAOs are generally not regulated. However, an interesting fact is that for example, Japan several months ago, they made an announcement that they are launching a Japanese DAO, and it will be launched by government. And what they want to do, they want to experiment and understand how DAOs actually work from the inside, and to understand okay, so how the DAO assets are used, how does community work, how DAO operates, and to generally understand how to understand the organization, and based on that, how they could potentially regulate them. So those are some fun facts when it comes to to Japan. And I mean, other countries, I don't think they're doing much when it comes to DAOs, but I would say that's like a general overview of the current regulatory state of DAOs.
That's phenomenal. I'm so impressed by how you. Thank you so much, first of all, for giving us such a fantastic overview of how is it operating in different countries and like that. Giving a very fun fact about Switzerland and what's happening in Japan. I'm super curious. I didn't know, and I think I'm very curious to look into it even further. Alexa, I'd love to ask you one of the biggest challenges DAO admins face, which is retaining good quality contributors. And the reason for that is, as much as people love DAOs, they are not capable of putting food on the table, right? They are operating right now as passion projects. So for you to retain high level talent, you have to give them stuff like, employee benefits and health insurance and stuff like that. So do you feel like DAOs at that point, and from a structural standpoint, how is it that they can compete with companies? Like, how far away are we from DAOs getting to the point where they are able to provide such employee benefits to contributors?
Well, first, thank you for the question. Like, understand that retaining contributors and retaining active members within DAO is a big issue for all the projects in the space. And in my honest opinion, I do not think that DAOs should be providing employee benefits and others that we do have in traditional companies, because traditional companies are built in a centralized way where you have that CEO, where you have that level of executives that do have a certain structure, they employ people as they do, and they manage the company the way they do. And DAOs are built on a premise of freedom and decentralization and self-organizing. And depending on how the DAOs will be regulated in the next 10 years, it's going to take some time. I think that like DAOs need to find a way to offer incentives to contributors, maybe rather partner up with some local companies that like private companies, health companies or whatnot, to get them some sort of like discounts or whatever. But I don't think it should be on the burden of a DAO to pay for those benefits, since that would mean centralization. That would really mean centralization, right? So nowadays we do have to have that legal wrapper in a specific jurisdiction, because it's important to limit those unlimited personal liabilities of the people who are involved. And with that, we do risk centralization. However, I preach that the centralization does not happen with registering the legal entity. The centralization happens with centralizing the operations and the governance, and that's one of the biggest challenges DAOs face in general. And going a step further and actually promising these employee benefits and other benefits that you can get in a traditional company is one additional layer of centralization. So that was not something that I would honestly advocate for.
Wow, that is such an interesting perspective and not at all an answer I was expecting. So you recommend DAOs to partner up with DAOs to focus on incentivizing their contributors more than employee benefits, and how they can do that is by partnering up with centralized companies who can provide that?
Well, why not? I mean, tokenization is something that will play a major role in transforming the traditional finance, the way we invest, the way we collaborate. And I think DAOs, again, like on-chain projects that come up with use cases and act as a bridge between DAOs that need to incentivize their contributors and to find a way to communicate with those companies that can provide, private insurance, private doctors, whatever it's needed, and to use the technology to establish that. So I'm not talking about, let's go to a lawyer, we sign a partnership agreement and we're good to go. It's rather the utilizing the technology we have and providing that to contributors and to the environment. The fact is that the tokenization is booming, right? Like in one of the 5-6 biggest industry that is entering tokenization is actually health industry. and they're exploring different use cases. For example, they're looking into how to tokenize health data, right? So how if you tokenize health data, how you can use it. And there was an interesting surveys in both Germany and Switzerland. And for example, the Swiss did say that they would consent to sharing that health data. In return, they get some discount on health insurance or some premium insurance and things like that. And the Germans voted pretty similarly. However, they said that they would like to choose who they're giving that health data to. So, and then we can look into actually like storing your own medical data into a form of NFT or a different token, in terms of like wherever I travel and whatever ever happened to me in life in terms of like my health history, I have it with me. So wherever I go, I can get the data for my and show it to my doctor, and I don't have to do a bunch of calls, and trying to reach my doctors at home who are probably sleeping, not answering phones, and they're like, fuck off, right? So, and tokenization of health data can really change that, and can really help, first of all, us to own our own data and choose who do we share it with, and as well use it to our benefit. And insurance companies are also looking into this. So how can we use blockchain tokenization to tokenize like that insurance? And I don't see why DAOs and Web2 companies couldn't find a similar use case. Okay, so DAOs do not do this, but here is a tool, here is a technology that we can use to bridge that issue and actually provide these benefits to our contributors.
That was phenomenal, and I'm so amazed. Tokenization of blockchain, that we've heard enough, but taking it from the perspective of like health insurance, and you're such an amazing point of being stuck calling versus owning your data is just like very, very amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I feel like because you have such deep understanding of this space, you're able to give this, like, you're able to understand like on a high level how is all of this going to work out. Thank you so much for that answer. My next question would be to you is what do you think is the potential impact of DAOs in revolutionizing traditional industries and businesses? Meaning, like, how is it that they can promote diversity and inclusion in the blockchain industry and disrupt the traditional power structure there is?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of DAOs, and that's exactly what DAOs are bringing, right? So if you look at a regular company in any jurisdiction, and if you're looking at the people that company can employ, it's usually you have to have, that diploma, you have to have those skills, you have to have, 20 plus years of experience with NFTs.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. Or the other day I read, like, you need to have like more than 5 years of experience working with ChatGPT. So
yeah.
That was an actual ad on LinkedIn. Anyways, going back to.
Oh my god.
So
yeah.
Yeah, that was like super funny. Anyways, sorry about that. So when it comes to traditional companies, right? So again, they're limited to a very specific jurisdiction. They have like a very specific set of requirements, and they also have very specific set of limitations of the people they can hire, right? So in Europe, if you're outside of EU, but you're not, and you're a super qualified a worker, but you just cannot easily get hired by any EU company because you have to go through that visa process and you have to do a bunch of checks. Like the employer is just gonna, we like you, but it's just not doable for us to do all this. And the same happens in other countries as well. And we do know that Web2 operates in a certain manner, which is generally highly exclusive towards genders and different races and different religions. It's a fact. And while in DAOs, you don't ask that, right? So what matters in a DAO is what you can do, what skills you bring to the table, what problem can you solve? How can you help solve a problem? And where's your passion? What do you want to do? What do you want to build upon? And in each and every industry, talent is the biggest asset. And this industry opens up a global, like a pool of global, like of talent everywhere, right? So you don't have the jurisdiction, you don't have the visa issue, you don't have an issue of people, I want to work in the office, I don't want to work in an office. You don't have an issue of people, you know, I just did not have an opportunity to get into some fancy schools because I didn't have financial abilities to do so. But that doesn't make me less worthy or less smart, less intelligent than someone who did have more means than I did. So DAOs changed that. DAOs removed that, and thanks to decentralization and thanks to its ability for anyone to get involved, basically who has a phone or a laptop, computer, and an internet connection, you can literally just do it. And the community is such that you can get easily immersed. You can ask questions that get answers to. I mean, it happens, you have assholes everywhere, right? Like, and you might ask 10 people and you don't get answer from 3, you don't get answer from 4, but the other are gonna reply. You can join Twitter Spaces, you can join LinkedIn audio events, you can go to other platforms and just listen and learn. And learn from people who have been in the space for a very long time or short time, doesn't matter. You can go on YouTube, but beware of shilling freelancers. And you can read articles online. You have access to information, and that's what you need. That's the only thing you need, to have access to information and to read that information and see where you fit, what you want to build, what you're passionate about, and just do it. And the DAOs allow that. Traditional companies do not. And we've been seeing, for example, in the States, what's happening with the regulations, with the SEC, with the securities, and with our favorite cartoon characters over there, the people are moving out. Like qualified people are moving out, people who are really good at what they're doing, they're great developers, they're great professionals, and they're moving out from the States because they don't want to deal with that regulation. They're moving to places that are more crypto friendly, that are more tax friendly. And guess what? Like those places are the ones actually developing. I mean, look at Dubai, what's happening. So many businesses moved out from the US to Dubai, so many businesses moved out from Europe to Dubai, and many more will. And the same goes with people. And people are building there, and that's what's gonna happen. And again, you don't have to move to Dubai to work for a Dubai company. You can be in Bali, you can be in Thailand, you can be sipping your cocktail on a beach and still doing your job. And traditional world does not allow you that. And again, you join Discord, you join Twitter Space, you're you have your username and you have your bio and whatever picture you put on, and you're good to go. So, and that's the beauty of it. So, I'm in several DAOs, and sometimes honestly, I don't know, should I say he or she to a person or it? I just don't know, and I don't really care. What I care is how they do the job we're supposed to do.
I love it. I know I keep on saying that after every answer of yours, but I just love your perspective, and I love the way you explain, and I love your summarization of it. I feel like just from this answer alone, we can get so many quotes. Talent is the biggest asset, and how DAOs are enabling global talent to come and function together. And I feel like that's a point that everyone can relate to. There are dream companies that you can't work with because maybe you don't have a college degree, or maybe you don't have the right visa, or maybe your age, or like you said, you don't have 5 years of experience in ChatGPT. There are so many reasons why you can't work for a firm. And those barriers and boundaries is something that DAOs just don't have. And that's why when people come together, powerful things happen. So thank you so much for sharing that answer. I think my next follow-up question to you would be, where does your conviction come from when it comes to DAOs? There's so many people who are still like super skeptical about this page. It is such early days. Systems are super scattered. We don't know if DAOs are gonna like. We believe in DAOs, but people still like can't see the big picture of DAOs being a thing to be serious about. So where does your conviction come from?
Well, I like to be honest. Like I think my journey into the industry is not really as typical, because I started in the industry by landing a job in a DAO, not even knowing what the DAO was, either how it operated. Yeah. And from the very beginning, I was involved in like on the governance aspect and structuring DAOs, because I do have experience working in tech and fintech, and I was mostly working with product and tech teams, and I do have that like project background. So it was like, yeah, cool, like, I don't see why this can work out. And then I was like, when I started reading about it, I was like, what the hell is this? Myself into. Yeah. And I had a great mentor, and I started learning a lot. And since I was involved in the governance in DAOs from day one, I learned the hard way DAOs, and I went through a bunch of communities and projects with different issues, with different problems, and different structures, to put it that way. And what I liked about DAOs was the freedom that it brings. And like, to be honest, like I never worked a day in an office. I was always working remotely and traveling, and I never liked that corporate environment. And DAOs were literally like a level up from the work I was doing, like, from type of job I had before getting into the industry. Yeah. And I understand, and I hear a lot that DAOs are, DAOs are just, they're fake, and they're this and that. Like, DAOs are not fake. Like, people building DAOs are fake, and that's a huge difference, right? So if I go on a conference and I hear, and I meet a guy who tells me I'm a CEO, and I'm like, okay, well, CEO, but, well, we're a DAO. I'm like, say that again. I'm sorry, I'm confused. And they're like, yeah, I'm CEO. Like, I meet my CTO and my CFO, and I'm like, you're DAO. Like, let me just rewind, and you really need to understand this. And, do you have a legal entity? No, we don't. We are fully decentralized. I'm like,
great.
Like, take a deep breath, right? And don't go Godzilla on them. And like, so my answer to that is, again, like, DAOs are not fake. People building DAOs are fake. And the fact is that people are very easy to go for hype and buzzwords. We saw it with NFTs, we saw it with metaverse, we saw it with so many things. And the DAOs are just another buzzword. And many people get into the space and see, okay, so DAOs are trending, so I'm going to kick off a DAO, I'm going to call it a DAO, community is going to get involved, because they will, since you call it a DAO, they would assume, okay, so I will have the ability to vote on decisions within the project, I will have the ability to contribute and get rewarded for it, I will have the ability to impact what's happening, and that's why I'm here. But in reality, that does not happen, because the DAOs wannabe DAOs are operating in a very centralized manner. And that happens for several reasons. Projects and founders DAO too soon when they're not ready. And the fact is that you do need to go through certain phases in order to be mature enough and be able to decentralize the decision-making power.
Yeah.
Because the community, first of all, needs to understand to begin with, what this environment is about, what the hell is DAO, and what is the project I'm involved in. And usually that education part is often missed, and it does not really happen. And then you have the founders complaining, my community is not involved at all. I cannot let them vote. And I'm like, well, if you don't educate your community on your own project, how do you expect them to be involved and make informed decisions? No, they cannot. If you don't have a governance roadmap, how how the hell can you build a decentralized governance and decentralized operations where there are like 3 people actually running everything, getting paid for it, and the only involvement you allow to your community is to come on weekly community calls and tell them how great you are. Probably many people are gonna hate me after this, but I don't care. Anyways,
I love that.
So I think those are those are the reasons why we call DAOs. I don't call why so many people call DAOs fake, and they do not believe in DAOs. They do not believe in decentralization. They do not believe in this and that. Many people do not believe in decentralization, first of all, because they're unable to give up the power. And that's something that I've been seeing a lot, talking with many projects. I've been actively involved in literally structuring governance in DAOs for over 2 years, and I've been through hell and heaven with the project. So I talked with many founders, and we want to do DAO. We want to raise money. But we do not want to decentralize the decision making, and we don't want to give up the power. And well, you might miss, this is web, let's say this is Web3, one number back, please go. So those are the problems, right? So it's not a problem with DAOs, it's a problem with people. And with actual understanding of what DAOs are, what they can do, what they cannot do. And not every project can be a DAO. Not every project should be a DAO. Not every business should move into the space and now we want to be a DAO and stuff like that. No, it's just you really need to understand whether you as the founder, whether you as the founding team are actually able to initiate a DAO for what really is. And if you're not, don't call DAOs fake. You're the problem, not DAOs.
Thank you again for sharing such an interesting perspective and separating that line between people and DAOs. Where the confusion lies is in the people, it's not the DAOs, So everything that people do end up questioning is because the people are not structuring things properly. Thank you so much for shedding on the light on that. I'd love to ask you, Yoda, my next question would be around, can you discuss any upcoming developments? Sorry guys, I write my questions because I forget everything. Can you discuss any upcoming developments or trends in the DAO space that you believe will be important to keep an eye on?
Well, what I'm noticing that people are talking product more, right? And I think that's a huge change from drunk kitties and other projects we had, not to name many. Because the hype is gone, the bear is strong, and the projects that build actual utility and there is actually something to offer to people are still alive, while the others are in a trash can. And if you're a builder and if you want to build, you see that and you understand the problem, and you understand that if you want to grow, if you want to make something, that's the way you have to go. You need to build a product. First you need to understand what the problem is, and then you need to understand whether you can solve that problem, and then can you build a solution to that problem. And once you've established that, well, that's actually the most important thing. And that's been happening a lot. I've been in spaces and I'm big on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there as well on Twitter. And more people are talking product, which I think is a great change, but we still have a long way to go because we have still, drunk kitty cyber projects, and but they will be kind of fleshed out as well. Then what else? Let's say, I don't think actually any significant changes are happening in terms of governance and community, to be honest. What I've noticed is that people think that the governance is only, we have smart contracts, we have our governance. No, you don't. No, you don't, because not everyone is a techie. No, not everyone uses a smart contract. And a smart contract cannot address human behavior. And you have to have that implemented if you actually think to live long and if you actually have ways to protect your community. So that's a very important piece. And then not treating your community as piggy banks either. And what I did notice as well is many started talking legal because of the several crashes we have to put in the past 6-7 months. So people are getting big on legal stuff and talking to lawyers. But the problem is what happens with lawyers is they talk traditional law, but they do not understand on-chain things. And I think there is a small disconnect there.
Yeah.
That needs to be bridged. It can be bridged with the use of people who actually understand how to bridge that and of the tools. And I think we need to have DAOs need to have established processes so they can actually function and grow and scale. And any other trend? Well, I actually went broader than that. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. But thank you. Sorry, please, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was thinking can I think of anything else when it comes to the trends? Well, I think I would pay attention to how things are developing in the space and how people are actually developing the tooling, and it's important to follow the regulatory developments because it's going to affect a lot of people. And Mika was postponed until April. Maybe they voted them, maybe they postpone it a bit more, but it will affect projects on some more, some less, and in the other regions as well. And I think those are, for example, very important factors, because what I've noticed happening is that people build a product without even having an hour call with a lawyer, and when they're about to launch, they cannot, because they would be in a really big legal pickle if they do so. And then you have to reset and go back and then waste a few months more in order to be able to launch and not end up in jail or something. So I think those are really important things to follow.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I loved how you said that smart contracts are not equal to governance. That is so much more about human behavior, and the fact that you pointed out that do not look at your community as a piggy bank, which I feel like a lot of people end up, making a mistake on. You said product companies and tooling companies should build in alignment with the regulations. Did I get that right?
I think when you start, when there is a product that you want to build because it's solving, you think, or you get validated that it's solving a problem, before diving very deep into it, talk to a legal professional to just understand the high level what potential challenges may be. Yeah. So you don't end up in a situation when you build it out and then you're about to launch and you're go to the lawyer, hey there, I just came, we are launching in a week, can you, I need a few contracts, and some legal structure. And then the lawyer is dude, in order to launch this, you need this license, you need to this, no. And that really delays. Yeah. And when you have that talk early on, an hour or two, you have that on the roadmap, right? So you go to a lawyer maybe 2 months before you're to launch, and then you're a lot on a safer side. And just having that legal informational call where you can get okay, well, I'm in clear, or maybe, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to, because sometimes you can literally tweak some stuff and avoid those legal issues.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more, and I feel like this is a major advice that everyone should take into account. So thanks so much for sharing that. as I remember, we initially had a call before this, which was like a brief introductory call, and we were talking about the fact that you mentioned that there aren't many female lawyers in the space. I'd love for you to expand on that. Like, why do you think that is the case? How do you feel about it? Like, I'd love your perspective on it.
Yeah, so what I noticed when I was looking for lawyers, that I would post an ad and I would get like 100% like men application, and I was like, well, this is a bit weird. Like, why is this happening? And then I did a bit of research, like of course, like on LinkedIn, because you can find like lawyers there, and it's a quite good reference that we have a lot more men than we have women as legal professionals in the space, and it's simple the fact. And when I started talking with some lawyers, like including men lawyers, they were like, well, no, we don't have any female we don't know any female lawyers that are actually involved in the space. And why that happens is the fact is that even at school, at universities, if women would decide to go for like to upskill in legal tech, they wouldn't be really supported by professors either. I talked with a few female lawyers that had that experience, because they would be like, you should go for IP, or you should go for commercial marketing and things like that, because that's for girls and tech is for men.
Oh my gosh.
And I think like, many feel discouraged. When you hear that from your professor, you're like, well, if this is what I'm getting from my professor, you're like, what can I expect in a workplace? And the fact is that, there are generally a lot fewer women in the space, and narrowing down to lawyers, the numbers are just really, really low. And I came up with that project, Legal Women in Blockchain, that is actually aimed at educating female legal professionals on crypto, Web3, and blockchain, and helping them get into the space, and actually establishing them as consultants, and helping them support projects. And we are targeting actually underrepresented communities, women that might not have had equal opportunities to get education on the industry, and we want to support their journey into the space. And when you look at some projects that are focused on education of women, they're either quite general, or they're focused on, let's say, coding or marketing and things like that. And while law is very specific, right? Like, and you really need to know, like, what are the things you need to study more, and how, for example, you can apply IP, trademark, copyright law to NFTs, right? So when it comes to the protection of identity, right? So, why is that a metaverse problem, right? So what can we do to prevent that? When it comes to smart contract, how can you translate a smart contract into the legal contract and protect what's written there? And when it comes to DAOs, right? Like, if you're looking for a lawyer if you're looking for a lawyer because you want to register a DAO in a jurisdiction that recognizes DAOs, or if you're looking for a different type of entity across the globe, you need a corporate lawyer, right? Like, and for that, you want a lawyer who at least knows something about the space. Like, I was on a call with lawyers where I was literally teaching them what a DAO is, and explaining them the governance, and while they were advertising themselves as blockchain lawyer on the website and other things. So it's very much needed, because we need to support the space, and we need to protect the space as much as we can. And even though I'm pro-regulation, I'm not for regulation that is hindering the industry for what it is, right? So I do not support the regulation that will centralize a DAO. I do not support the regulation that will require everyone involved to KYC. I do not support the legislation that will tag NFTs as unquestionable insecurities, and like what happens with the project, right? So I do not support legislation that will slow down metaverse development. However, we need to have some protections in place because bad things are happening, and it's a fact, right? If you look at metaverse, right, like I read an article where a journalist pretended to be a 12-year-old girl and went into a metaverse strip bar where, I mean, whatever was happening, and there was no, protection against that. And I mean, it was a journalist, right? But what happens when really a kid that is 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, I mean, that's not a place for a kid, right? Like they should be playing, I don't know, like games, I don't know, catching ball and things like that, not going into a metaverse strip club. And then we had a case where a gaming project would actually, there was no protection of identity of kids under 13. And we need to protect kids. I mean, we definitely should allow them to play, enjoy, explore metaverse, but not at the cost of their identities, their data, and there are predators online, so many, right? Like only in social platforms, social media platforms. Imagine like going on chain where you basically mostly you cannot really track identities. There was harassment of women, right? So we need to have those those things implemented in terms of like protection, but again, not at the cost of destroying what we're building upon and what we want to do. And that's why we need innovative regulations that are supportive, and we should not settle for anything less than that. So that's my take on the regulations.
I just, give it a moment of silence because someone might think, why is there always such a focus on women being in certain spaces and stuff like that? And you gave such a real life example. Until women are in spaces like these, until they're in positions of leadership and stuff, they cannot, set these regulations that suit their needs. And not just women, but any, other non-binary or, underrepresented communities. Like we as common people, can't even think of the dangers that can, like you were speaking about kids who are under the age of 13, playing games and how their data is at risk and things like that. Like those are some real problems. And it's amazing that you're in this space and the things that you're fighting for. And I know it would have not been a super easy journey for you to be here, but absolutely phenomenal. And I think this is such an important point. Like we must encourage women and non-binary and underrepresented communities. Like it is so important. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thanks for also sharing your professor experience on how petty people we run into who might just end up saying, oh, this is not made for you and stuff like that. Like stand against it on all levels. And I think it's something super important for everyone who's attending here to take a stand for yourself and not let these things shake you up. Like there are shitty people everywhere, but that's why we need good people in positions of power so that good overpowers the bad. But phenomenal, Aleksa. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah.
I mean, it's not about only bringing women, right? Like it's bringing everyone who wants to be here and build on the ethos of the industry, right? It's not only, we can do it together, and we should do it together, right? So what I'm noticing a lot that the women, women getting into the industry and the general, however, to put it that way, how the male-female relationship is developing here is it became like a battle of the sexes, right? And it's just really bad. It's not supposed to be like that, because we should be building it together, and we should be building it together. And it's not women empowering women, right? So it's men empowering women and women empowering men, women empowering women and men empowering men. And it doesn't have to, it shouldn't be. And I think it cannot be like one against each other. It's rather one with each other, and see what we can learn and what we can do. And the fact that I'm advocating, that I'm doing it for the women is because I'm a woman. And I had my share of discrimination just because being a woman, and my friends and the people I met in the space. And I think that, men and women are brought up in different ways. And many women do need a bit more push than men, just because of the cultural differences, because of the way we were brought up, because of, I mean, those are all important factors that we have to take into account. And I think women feel a lot more comfortable with women supporting them, and that's perfectly okay. But in the project that I'm building, I'm not for narrative, you know, women are the best and women are the greatest, like screw the men. Like, I absolutely despise that, because I've had great male coworkers. My mentors were males. I had men that were extremely supportive of me, and now I have a chance to be supportive of those that just don't feel like they have an opportunity to be in. And I mean, as I told you earlier, right? Like, I grew up in an environment where I was like, you know, playing with boys, and I was just like, you know, never felt intimidated or anything. But many women are not like that. I mean, look at 2022 and what's happening. I mean, women are killed for showing a bit of hair. Women are forbidden from going to schools, and now they're even denied medical attention. And like, women are not allowed to school to become doctors, but now men doctors are actually forbidden from giving help to females. So and those are, like, you know, there are so many other cases, and we just have to do something about it. And you know, I want to empower women as much as I want to empower men, and other way around. So there is no that distinction. However, as a woman, I do feel I have that role to support women and those who identify as.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That is my comeback to every question, but because I'm just like so moved by answers, like, I appreciate it. And I appreciate for what you stand in this space, and I'm so appreciative for the conversation that we're having today, because conversations is where it all starts, right? Like, this discourse is where it all starts, where people can start taking actions and be aware of, you know, what is it, you know, what is my responsibility, what is that one step I can take, you know, to make the situation better. Thank you so much for taking that up. We have 2 community questions. Everyone who's live here, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. There are 2 questions we received from our registration link. Aleksa, I'm going to share with you. Is DAOs are still born from a centralized core team. What is the right path to tokenization and decentralization?
So I will respond first to the decentralization, from centralization to decentralization.
Yeah.
So the fact is that each and every project starts from 1, 2, or a smaller group of people. And for a certain period of time, it does need to be that way, because you need to work fast. We all know that, you know, startup world is crazy. Web3 startup world is even crazier, and things move super fast. And you need to be able to make those quick decisions, and you need to be able to make those fast moves. However, that does not prevent you from building the community at the same time, and be very transparent about it, to build a roadmap and say, this is where we are now, this is where we want to go, and these are the milestones. And these are the milestones, and when we reach a certain milestone, this is what we're gonna do. But we need community for that. Like, we need community to be involved, so we can start decentralizing the power. And that's perfectly fine, because the problem that happens is that there is no transparency, there are false promises. And many projects do not have a governance roadmap. They just do not. And because, again, like, I have smart contracts, I'm building this tech, I have these NFTs, or I don't know, I'm going to be, you know, building a metaverse space or whatnot. And it's fine. But again, you need to take care of the community, and the community needs that roadmap, and build that governance roadmap that is step-by-step decentralization, be transparent about it, talk to your community from the very beginning, have them involved as much as you can at that level of centralization/decentralization, and move forward with it. And that's how you will be able to decentralize over time, and again, not disappoint the community, which is very, very important. And don't be afraid of initial centralization killing the project, because false promises are the ones killing the project. And when it comes to tokenization, I would say that it's important to really understand whether the tokenization is applicable in the business and in the product, the service you're offering, whatever. And find different utilities. And the good thing is that tokenization is actually can be put in the existing framework. So they're not, I mean, of course, there is certain level of regulatory uncertainty. However, it's a lot easier to navigate it than when it comes to DAOs and in crypto. So actual use case, actual utility, and validating, talking with a lot of, like, if you know who your target audience is, or if you're not sure, do market research, do industry research, check previous similar projects, what they did well, what they did wrong, and see whether that's something that is actually viable for what you want to do.
Thank you so much for taking that up. Aleksa, we are kind of running out of time already, so we will just do a quick rapid fire. We have 2 questions left. Nayan asks, what terms should a DAO avoid in the communications to avoid coming in preview of SEC? Or is there even a mandate like that?
Well, we have a case that can really teach you what not to do. Like recently, a few months ago, we had a case of a DAO that initially was an actual entity, a registered entity that was dissolved, and the founders publicly said, "Well, we're dissolving this entity and we're moving all these, all the funds and all the IP that we have onto a DAO, so we don't have to be compliant." And we don't have to KYC, and they posted it on community platforms, and it was very much available to everyone. And of course, that triggered a lot of bad things. So first, I would begin with that. And when you're trying to understand whether your token can be regarded as a security, I would suggest checking out the Howey test. And I actually did, on my podcast, I actually did an episode on securities with a US-based lawyer who is actually, I think he was also he's a securities lawyer as well. And we really break down the Howey test and what are the dangers of the securities of the Howey test, and what can be seen as a security, what not, and why some cryptos are regarded as a security. So I would start there, and to kind of really cover the basics and see whether, answering those 4 questions, even for yourself, they're very broad, but it's easy to grasp for anyone. And from there, you can kind of understand where you stand. And in general, do not avoid, right? So if your token, it can be regarded as a security, don't think you can have workarounds, and do not think you can escape the regulations, because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass 100%. And, be ready in time.
Thank you so much for answering that. The next question says, what makes a jurisdiction, oh my god, I cannot pronounce that word. What makes a jurisdiction better or worse when deciding for the legal wrapper for the DAO?
Mm-hmm. So I would put a huge disclaimer and say that there is no one solution that fits them all. So if jurisdiction worked for 10 projects, for 100 projects, it doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. So understanding doing some sort of a legal and business assessment of the project, which would be where the founders are from, where is your majority of the community from, because that's something that you should know. And of course, high level, not going into details, what your project wants to do, in 6 months from now, what your project wants to do in 2 years from now. At least high level startups, right? Yeah. And really understand the mission and vision behind the project, and really carefully decide whether certain jurisdiction is good or not. And that's very, very important. the good thing is that you can move. You can move your the legal wrap from one jurisdiction to another, but there are also, it sometimes can be easy, sometimes can be complicated. And what I would also suggest is really what do I say? Yeah, so the legal business assessment, understanding the community and where the founders are from, the roadmap. Yeah, I think actually that I cannot remember one more thing. Sorry, slipped my mind.
Perfect. Thank you, Aleksa. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much for taking up all the community questions.
Of course.
Any ending thoughts before we close?
I mean, it was a great pleasure talking to you, and I thank you again for the invite. I hope that my answers help someone. And again, additional disclaimer, not an advice. This is really based on my experience, on my really studying the space as much as I can, especially DAOs. And don't be afraid of the space. Don't be afraid of the regulations. Don't be afraid to ask, and be careful, right? Like, try to think as many steps as you can ahead, and better do it slowly than doing it faster and later on having many issues, not only legal, right? Like product, community, losing the investment. So there are different things that can really affect the project longer term. And I don't know, I'll be doing also some spaces on DAOs where people could ask me random questions. So, watch out for that, so I can help when needed. I can help with that. And educate yourself as much as you can, but avoid influencers that are, talking a bunch of shit and shilling everything. And rather, take it with, with kind of like a high level of criticism, but see what you can learn from it.
Thank you, Aleksa. You're awesome and absolutely phenomenal. Throughout this episode, I was just visualizing there's so many highlight clips that I'm going to extract and push them all over the internet because people need those answers. And you were amazing. Guys, I will be sharing a link to our newest product called the DAO Manager in the chat, which is for you guys. It is your one-stop shop for all your DAO tooling operations. Right now you're using Snapshot, Discord, 100 different tools to just like manage operations on different platforms. This is one-stop shop to do everything, all in one platform for discussions, proposals, tasks, payout. So be sure to check it out. Over there you will also see a workspace called the Ultimate Roundtable, which we just hosted this Friday. That's where our voting happened and stuff like that. So I'd love for you guys to check it out. And Aleksa and everyone present here, I want to ask and take your advice on something, which is I feel like we bring all these amazing people together, and adding them on Discord is not enough, because when you ping people on Discord, they don't really get any notification because they're part of 100 other Discord servers, right? So I was thinking if I can put you guys on a Telegram chat, so that I've connected with some amazing DAO admins and they would love to connect with someone in the legal space, and they might want your service, or you might want to connect with someone. So it's going to be very interesting for you guys to interact with each other. I want to put you in like one group where you can get to know each other. So what's a good place? Like, would Telegram make sense? Can we create a workspace on our tool, the DAO Manager? Like, what's most convenient to you?
Well, I think Telegram is pretty good, right? Because it's spammy, of course, like since there are like so many things happening there, but it's the tool that we'll be using for a bit more until, some other tools become a lot more popular. And I cannot wait till we get rid of Discord as well. To be honest with you.
In that case, you should definitely try our tool. The DAO Manager is fucking phenomenal. It's still in beta version, so we're just like really pushing it and making communities on board onto it. But yes, Aleksa, you said what tool would work for you for messaging, pinging you?
Like Telegram is fine because it's just like I have it on the phone and laptop, so it's pretty easy to use. Thanks.
Perfect. So just make sure that your settings are correct, because some people's profile settings on Telegram are such that you can't add them to the group. So if your settings are in place, and guys in the attendees, please put your Telegram handles on the chat. Aleksa, I'll take your Telegram handle on our Twitter DMs, and I'm going to slowly start compiling and connecting everyone. But Thank you for being phenomenal. Have a beautiful Friday, everyone. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.
Hi, thank you.